I never believed abuse could sound gentle. Maybe that's why I didn't notice it at first, because I always imagined abuse was loud. Broken plates, slammed doors, screamed insults that echoed down the hall. But his voice was nothing like that. It was soft, almost pleasant, like someone explaining how the world worked in neutral weather. We were sitting at the kitchen table the night he first said it. A cheap wooden thing he'd bought secondhand, then bragged for weeks about how he negotiated the seller down. He spread the receipts across the table, his pen tapping against them like a judge's gavel. "I'm not punishing you," he said. "I'm just telling you how it works. You should learn your place. It makes everything smoother." I stared at him, blinking, trying to figure out if he was kidding. Learn my place, like this was 1950 and I was auditioning for the role of appliance. He wasn't even looking at me. He was looking at a spreadsheet. That was the worst part, not the words but the way they didn't even matter enough to earn eye contact. Like I was a system he was recalibrating. "I work," he continued calmly, "so I decide. If you don't like that you can earn more and then we'll talk." I swallowed a laugh because it didn't make sense. He made a little more than I did, but not in a way that mattered, 20 maybe 30%. But in his mind that 20% was a crown, and I was a knight kneeling in the dirt. I said quietly, "You don't get to talk to me like that." He raised his eyes for the first time. Not angry, not offended, just confused. "Like what?" he asked. "As if I'm beneath you." He leaned back in his chair and sighed the way teachers sigh at dumb students. "See, that's the problem," he said. "You think equality means we're the same, but someone has to lead. Someone has to follow. You, sweetheart, follow." There it was, not a shout, not a blow, just a sentence delivered like fact. I asked him, "And who decided that?" He didn't hesitate. "You did, when you let me take care of you. That's the deal." It was surreal, like watching a stranger wear your boyfriend's face. I stood up. He didn't yell, he didn't grab my wrist, no violence, no theatrics. He just said one more line that crawled under my ribs and made a nest there. "Stop trying to be more than you are. It embarrasses you." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just stared at him and thought, this is how women lose themselves, not in storms, in drizzle, little drops of less, said every day. When I finally spoke, it wasn't dramatic, just soft. "I'm going to see my mom." He waved his hand like he was swatting away a fly. "Go," he said. "Maybe she'll explain it better." And I left, thinking that would be the last insult of the night. I didn't know then that the real storm was waiting in the hallway of my childhood home, in the woman who looked at me and understood everything without a single word. My mother always had a way of reading me that scared me a little. When I was a child, she could look at my shoes and know if I'd been bullied. She could look at the way I closed a door and tell whether I'd cried in the bathroom at school. Even as an adult, I could walk into her house, speak one sentence, and her eyes would narrow like she was reading the spaces between the words. That night, I didn't even make it past the threshold. She opened the door, looked at my face, and asked one question. "Who hurt you?" Not what happened. Not "Are you okay?" Who? Because she already knew something had been done to me, she just didn't know by whom. I told her I was tired. I told her I didn't want to talk right now. She nodded, but her jaw clenched the way it does when she decides the truth is coming, whether you want to give it or not. She made tea, loudly, like she was daring the kettle to argue. I sat at her kitchen table, the real one, smooth oak, polished by years of meals and grief and healing, not like his, cold and transactional. Just being there made me feel small again, and not in a bad way, in the kind of way a child feels when they come home after scraping their knees. Finally, she said, "Tell me what he said." And I did. Not all at once, just pieces, like stones pulled out of my throat. "He said I should learn my place," I whispered. She didn't blink. "What else?" "He said someone has to lead, and someone has to follow." Her hand tightened around her mug. "And," I swallowed hard, "he said I embarrass myself by trying to be more than I am." That was the moment I watched something ancient move behind her eyes. Not sadness, not anger, a memory, a history. She sat perfectly still for a long, aching minute. Then she stood up, walked down the hall, and came back with a small suitcase, the one she kept under her bed from when she left my father the first time. She didn't look at me. She didn't ask permission. She opened my closet, folded my shirts, one by one, placed each into the suitcase with a precision that felt ceremonial. I asked, "Mom, what are you doing?" She didn't answer. She folded my jeans, my sweater, even grabbed the slippers I always forgot under the bed. It felt wrong, like I was watching a ritual that had been performed before, and she was doing it from memory. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, low, and terrifyingly calm. "He reminds me of your father." I froze. My mother never spoke of him. Not the fights, Not the nights he disappeared, not the things he broke when she refused to shrink. She only ever said, "I survived him," and somehow that one sentence was enough to fill every blank. She zipped the suitcase. Then, as if summoned, he knocked on the door. He didn't wait for her to open it, he just walked in like it was already his space. "Where is she?" he asked, annoyed, not worried, as if I'd wandered off like a misbehaving pet. My mother turned around, not slowly, not dramatically, like she had been waiting for him. He saw the suitcase, his face twisted with confusion, then indignation. "What is this supposed to be?" he scoffed. I opened my mouth, ready to explain, to apologize, to smooth it over like I always did. But my mother lifted her hand slightly, not to silence me, but to protect me, and she looked at him with the same expression she used when she finally fixed something she'd spent a lifetime repairing. A tired, final look, the kind you give a broken thing you no longer intend to fix. Her voice was calm. "If you want a servant," she said, "buy one." He laughed. It sputtered, unsure. Like he wasn't certain he was allowed to be insulted. My mother didn't blink. "You don't get my daughter." The words didn't echo. They landed. Heavy, solid, like stone. He stared at her as if someone had rewritten the universe while he was checking his phone. That was the first time I realized something. My mother had not just packed my suitcase, she was packing my future. Not because I was weak, but because she was done watching me pretend I wasn't worth saving. He stood there in my mother's living room, arms crossed, eyes narrowed like he was staring at faulty furniture. Not a partner, not a man in love, a disappointed customer. "This is ridiculous," he said, gesturing at the suitcase as if it insulted him. "She's overreacting. She always does. She'll calm down." My mother didn't move. He tried again, more confident now. "She just needs time. Let me talk to her alone." I didn't answer, and that silence, the same silence he used to weaponize against me, suddenly became a shield. I could tell he didn't know where to aim anymore. He stepped toward me, still speaking calmly. "Listen, sweetheart. You're emotional. You get dramatic, and it's okay. I know how to handle you." There it was again. Handle. Like I was a horse he'd taken lessons on riding. My mother turned her head slowly, like a queen acknowledging a peasant who had spoken out of turn. "Say it again," she said quietly. He blinked. "What?" "That she needs to be handled." He hesitated, then straightened up. "I'm not talking to you. This is between us." He pointed at me like ownership was something visible. My mother took one step closer, not threatening, not loud, just firmly entering his space like she was reclaiming air he had borrowed. "When you talk to my daughter," she said, "you are talking to me. When you disrespect her, you disrespect me. And when you try to own her, you challenge every woman in this house." He scoffed. "Oh please. You're blowing this way out of proportion. She's sensitive, you're dramatic. You two feed off each other." It was the wrong sentence. The final spark dropped into a room filled with gasoline. My mother didn't scream. She didn't cry. She didn't lose control. She simply reached into her purse, pulled out her phone, and said, "Leave, now, or I call the police and tell them a grown man is trespassing in my home." He froze. Not because he was scared, but because he genuinely did not understand. Men like him don't fear consequences. They fear witnesses. He looked at me, desperate for the dynamic he knew. The dynamic where I apologized before anything began, where I caved, where I shrugged and whispered, "He's just tired, Mom. He's stressed. I'll fix it." But I didn't speak. I just stood there, clutching the handle of my suitcase like it was an anchor. He laughed. Brittle, defensive, ugly. "You're both insane. You'll come crawling back. You always do." And then my mother did something I wasn't prepared for. She walked to the front door, opened it, and stepped aside. Not like she was kicking him out. Like she was offering him a choice. Walk away, or be carried. He stared at her, waiting for the weakness. That moment when women crack, and beg, and try to smooth the edges. It never came. He grabbed his keys, jaw clenched, and shoved past her into the night. The door closed behind him with no dramatic slam, just a quiet final click. I waited for the relief to hit, but it didn't. Instead, I felt a strange emptiness, like I'd just watched someone drown in shallow water. My mother didn't hug me. She didn't tell me I did the right thing. She just walked back into the living room, sat on the couch, and patted the cushion beside her. I sat down, still shaking. She handed me a cup of tea, then spoke like she was reciting scripture. "Men who need to be above you cannot love you. They can only use you. And I didn't raise you to be used." I didn't answer. I couldn't. Not because I disagreed, but because for the first time in months, I felt something warm in my chest. Not hope, not relief. Recognition. Like I had been a blurry version of myself for so long, and someone finally adjusted the lens. And in that moment, in my mother's quiet living room, I realized something she had known for decades. The day a woman stops explaining herself is the day she becomes dangerous. For a few days, the silence was heavy, not the suffocating silence I'd lived with him, but the stillness after a storm when trees are bent and the ground is wet, but the air tastes like a second chance. I slept in my old room, same walls, same posters, same creaking window. But I wasn't the same girl anymore. I woke up every morning expecting a message from him. A paragraph, an apology, a tantrum, nothing. Instead, what came was his mother. She arrived at our house without warning, her voice polished like expensive shoes, saying things like relationships require compromise, she needs to come home. Home. As if the place where I'd been told to learn my place was home. She spoke to my mother as though I wasn't in the room, her hands fluttering like she was swatting away a bad smell. She's emotional, you know how young women are. My mother cut her off with a tone so gentle it was surgical. No, I don't. But I know how men like your son are. The woman blinked, slow, stunned. Then, like a queen dismissing a servant, my mother simply pointed toward the door. Not a word needed. The door closed. The world got quieter. Weeks passed. I applied for 2 jobs. Got both. Took the one that valued me most. I started therapy, without asking permission this time. I learned how to breathe again, how to eat without guilt, how to fall asleep without bracing for arguments. He sent one message in all that time. A single line. I hope you learned your lesson. I stared at it for 10 minutes. I didn't respond. Sometimes the greatest reply is no reply at all. Then the universe did what it always does with fragile egos. It handed them a mirror. Not gently, not kindly. He lost the job that made him feel superior. Something about insubordination. He couldn't handle being told he was beneath someone else. He called me at 3 a.m. His voice wasn't calm anymore. It was cracked, desperate. Can we talk? Please. Everything is falling apart. I almost said yes, because I remembered that version of myself, the one who thought love meant fixing broken things with pieces of your own body. But then I remembered another image. My mother, folding my clothes with shaking hands, looking at him like she was done fixing things that refused to stay fixed. So I said no. He didn't shout. He didn't cry. He just whispered, "I thought you loved me." And I told him the truth he never earned. I did. Until I learned my place. Turns out it wasn't beneath you. I hung up. Not angrily. Not triumphantly. Just finally. Months later, I helped my mom clean out the garage. Boxes everywhere. Old memories piled like forgotten debts. She found her old suitcase. The one she used to leave my father. "Funny," she said, wiping dust from it. "I always thought I packed it because I was weak. But really, I just stopped waiting to be saved." I asked her if she regretted anything. She laughed, quiet and honest. "I regret staying longer than I needed to. Never leaving. Never teaching you what I should have sooner." I touched her hand. "You taught me everything," I said. She looked at me sideways. "No," she whispered. "You taught yourself. I just opened the door." And that was the moment I realized. The story wasn't about him at all, or the words he used to make me smaller. It was about the 2 women who refused to kneel, the one who packed the suitcase, and the one who finally picked it up.